yeah, we're experiencing this we're looking at like this new golden age of franchising right now that I thought it was an incredible time during that 2004, 2005, even 2006. But this is like far beyond that, blows it away. But it's also created a challenge now because so many of these emerging franchisors are growing way too quick and don't have the infrastructure to support it. And possibly someday there's going to be a cleansing. There's going to be another implosion of, just like there was a cleansing during the Great Recession.
Yep.
There'll be a cleansing of franchisors that couldn't support having too many franchise owners and not having their act together and having systems and processes in place and the infrastructure of folks.
Yeah, that was a big learning lesson for us. Last year at the FBA conference, we won the Emerging Brand of the Year award.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And the honest story behind that, I love FBA. They're a great organ. I love TES, IFPG. I love them all. The FBA has a very special place in my heart because they were the first franchise broker association that we were affiliated with. So I'm sitting there at the rubber chicken dinner. No disrespect to their food there at the Omni. It's actually pretty good. And I'm sitting there and I'm sitting at a table kind of halfway in the middle in the back. And I'm talking to a guy just like you and I are talking right now. And I've got my Home Smile shirt on, and we're bop, 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 bop. And they're up there giving out the awards. Well, never in a million years did it occur to me that we would ever win anything, right? We had like 6 locations at the time, and we're just little baby Home Smiles. And the guy's looking at me, and he goes, hey, aren't you with Home Smiles? And I go, yeah, that's why it's on the shirt. And he goes, they're calling your name.
Oh.
Yeah, honest God.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And I turned and I looked up, and he goes, you better get up there. And I go, and I grabbed our CSO, and he and I walked up there, and I go, what's this for? And he goes, I don't know. And we walked up to the stage, and everybody's clapping, and there's us and 2 other brands that were up there, and they announced this is for the Emerging Franchise Brand of the Year award. And I looked at these other 2, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna be third place, distant third place. Anyway, they called one brand, they called another brand, and it was obvious that we won the thing, and it was amazing. And I'll come back to why it was so pivotal. But taking that award after the presentation, I took it up to my room there at the Omni, and I set it down on the credenza, and I just looked at it. And somebody had told me on the way out, I said, how do you win this thing? She goes, it's by popular vote of all of the brokers, right? And that meant a lot to me, right? It's not something that you lobby for. It's not something that you pay for, right? It's just because the brokers have been around for, some of the FBA brokers been there 17, 15 years, a whole bunch of them.
Oh, yeah.
They've been around the block. They've seen every concept. They've seen companies come and go.
Right.
And for them to all vote us, the emerging brand, to me, said that we were onto something. And that kind of became the joke around the office for the next year, like, hey, I think we're onto something. Why that was pivotal is because after that, we were contacted by virtually all the FSOs. And this ties into your comment regarding the period of franchising that we're in, right? And I see it. And when we were contacted by all the FSOs, we have a great outside counsel firm that represents us. And he said, hey, you got to be really careful about these FSOs. And he said, for example, like, here's the track record of one of them that is, and I'm not going to mention the FSO, and I'm not going to mention the brands, of course, that would be unfair. They're not here to defend themselves, but where they had taken brands and just blown up 100 locations in a year. And then they were unable to deliver. They couldn't deliver. They couldn't get the franchises open. And I know you've heard those stories, and I've heard those stories.
Right. So the question we always, hear at any conference, it's when you talk to a franchisor and you ask them, how many franchises? And they say a number. The follow-up question is always, okay, how many are open and how many are in development? It's not how many franchises you have, because people will always give us the big number. Now, in your case, you guys are on fire. So you've got 12 open in 5 states, and you have another 16 in development across another 5 states.
Correct.
For you, like, where do you think, or I should say, how quickly do you feel comfortable with scaling this thing? Because clearly you're getting the demand. Demand is not the issue. Why do you continue to tap the brakes and not let this thing blow up? In a good way, I mean, of course. No,
the answer to that question is very simple. I need 2 things, Frank. I need to be able to sleep at night, and I need to be able to walk down the street with my head held high, right? I'm not going to sell something I can't deliver on.
Are you real difficult in terms of the franchise owners that you award to, because you're obviously in great demand and there's not a whole lot of numbers? You've got to be pretty picky.
We are picky. And in fact, what I did, and again, with some counsel from some senior franchise people, is we put together a board. And so it has to be a unanimous vote. And I would say we get unanimity on 60%, maybe. Maybe between 60 and 70%, but at least 30% we say, sorry, you're not right for us.
Good for you.
And we have an acronym. I'm a big Brian Scudamore fan.
Oh, yeah.
So, I read all of his stuff. I just think, what he has done with his companies is very impressive.
And for those listening, 1-800-GOT-JUNK
Yes.
is Brian's baby.
Yep.
And Brian, he was an influence on me way back in 2008. And I reached out to Brian because I heard him speak at the IFA.
Yep.
And I was going through that time period where I knew that I needed to hire for my weakness. And I needed to hire a COO. And of course, one of the things that Brian is so passionate about is getting out of your own way as a founder and hiring a COO.
Yep.
And so I reached out to Brian, did not know him, but again, franchising, we always say, is so generous.
Yep.
I found him and we had a great conversation. And I asked him, Brian, when did you know when you needed to make that hire? And he says, you'll know. And he says, if you're asking the question, that means that you're ready.
Exactly.
So, but anyway, I wanted to segue to Brian because he was a very helpful influence on my career.
Yeah, he's helped a lot of people. And I love his books as well, right? I'm not even going to open the Pandora's box on Painted Picture and stuff like that. But I love his stuff. And so the board has to vote, and it has to be unanimous. About 30% of the candidates, and I'm guesstimating because I haven't run those numbers specifically, but somewhere in that range we say no to. But the acronym that we're all using as we're going through, whether it be a founder's call or a meet the team day or any other part of our pipeline, is PIPE. And that's professional, independent, proactive, and entrepreneurial, which I stole from Scudamore. So you get credit for that one, Brian. And a lot of people, what I have found is a lot of people that come into our pipeline, they'll hit the first three, not a problem. They're professional. They've been in the workforce for 20 years. They're independent. You can tell, hey, they've run their own sales division. They're proactive. I mean, they're asking questions. They're engaging. They're sending information in. They're completing surveys. They're doing what they need to do to participate in our timeline. But I just don't get the feeling that they will be able to survive in an entrepreneurial world. That's been one of my biggest aha moments in franchising, is that some people are entrepreneurs and some people aren't.
Sure.
And it's a whole different mindset. It just is. There's a completely different mindset between I go to work, somebody sends me a paycheck, and I go to work and I make money for myself.
Right.
And that to me is the biggest criteria that I need to feel confident that this person is going to be able to do that, because otherwise I am giving them false hope.
True. I would love, though, Jess, for you to clarify sort of the debate in franchising, though, is that, the argument on the other side is that people say, well, I don't want somebody that's an entrepreneur because they're not going to follow the rules. So it's kind of a fine line. You want them to be entrepreneurial, that they're going to get out and be proactive. You're not going to make sure they wake up out of bed and doing the job. Right. But you need them to have a head on their shoulders at the same time and being able to be entrepreneurial enough, yet they have to color within the lines. So what's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that is I'm looking at it from a much more of a micro level than a macro level, right? We're not trying to hire people that are going to completely critique and revamp the concept that we have, because the concept works. But it's just that confidence in my head and in my heart that this person is going to be okay leading their own tribe. I guess, at a micro level, So that's our criteria, and if people don't fulfill that criteria, then we don't give an award. Yeah, the demand is ridiculous for the brand right now. And so what we're focused on is just making sure that we're growing at a safe pace for everyone.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.